It was Damrada who came. Kondo, there's no need to kill her, is there? This person can still be useful to His Majesty if she is trained properly. No, the probability is 0. This woman's strength is at most 37th in the sequence, but if she can make it to the 12th position, it's possible that she can't be of use to His Majesty. I deliberately acted defenseless, but she couldn't even break through my defenses, Kondo said coldly. Damrada sniffed and shrugged. If Kondo had said that, then it would have been correct, so he didn't retort any more either. It's just that, in the face of his former partner, Misha, his heart is inevitably complicated. Damrada knelt beside Misha and covered his hand over the left side of the body's head. The soft light blocked the wounds of the remains, pressing back the eyes that had flown out of Misha's head and closing the eyelids. Finally, wiped the stain off her face and did something to retrieve what little beauty there was. Damrada did not have the power to resurrect the dead, but at least something could be done to put her to rest. No sense in it. Leave it alone and the body will be disposed of before dawn. Answer my question faster than that. I'm not like you. I can't be separated. Naive. You're the one who's weird. So young, but why do you want to completely stifle your feelings? I have no feelings, that's all. How can? I have seen hell, and it was His Majesty Rudra who saved me from it. If you become an enemy, I will not forgive you. I am His Majesty's faithful slave and can never betray. It's hard to say. And don't forget, you've also fallen for my trick. If you want to be trusted, prove it by your actions. After saying that, Kondo also left without looking back. Damrada took one look at Misha's body and left the place as well. It's a long night in Tiju. What should be done, is not done. After that, through the hands of the intelligence service, Misha's body was disposed of without leaving a trace. The darkness of Tiju was deep, burying all events without a trace. At Yuki's instruction, Kagali immediately acted. Meticulous preparation is essential for a coup d'état. On the same day the order was issued, and in a few days important people gathered from all over the world. Nearly 30 subordinates flocked to the mansion in the Yuki imperial city. This time, it was the people who had sworn absolute allegiance to Yuki. Almost half of the subordinates had already gathered here, except for those like Vega who had infiltrated other legions that could not participate. Plans for the coup have been in constant preparation since before. The people gathered here were waiting for Yuki's speech with the feeling that it was finally this time. The entire team is a group of people with some strength. Relying on their own strengths, they rose to prominence in the army. Loyalty to Emperor Rudra has been non-existent from the beginning. There are even those who are excited by the revolution they will bring to this country. Visitors from the otherworld. Interracial with an alien race. Subjects who repeatedly conduct inhumane experiments in pursuit of power. A first-class adventurer nurtured by Yuki. There were also the slave warriors that Damrada had collected and the monsters that Misha had protected. What they believe in is violence, that is, the values of this hybrid legion. Step up the huge duplex staircase with a large room for meetings. Estimating the time when the whole group was seated in their chairs, Yuki came in with Kagali. "Ah, everybody, we're all here." In his usual cheerful tone, Yuki greeted with a smile. "Tomorrow, we are scheduled to have a meeting with the Demon Lord, Rimuru. Already Misha has been told to call Damrada, the details will wait until Damrada arrives." On hearing this statement, the room erupted. Aren't I the only one waiting to do it? The Demon Lord Rimuru is too cunning to be careless. Can you believe it? No, wait. That said, it's still war, right? As a party to the war, there is no way that Rimuru the Monster King himself would have taken the time to come here. Various statements came from all corners of the venue. Yuki's smile deepened. The Imperial Army has been overwhelmed. It's said that Rimuru killed all the 940,000 Imperial troops that attacked. How can that be? Too soon. Even counting the movement time, contact with the enemy is only a few days. Hearing these incredible words, the whole room erupted into a tizzy. Yuki smiled and gestured for everyone to be quiet. To overthrow an empire, combat power is necessary. So I decided to join forces with Rimuru-san. Hearing this, although it was difficult to accept, people who showed understanding for Yuki began to appear. Shrewdly, they began to care about whether this information was trustworthy. Did you bring this information from Lady Misha? There are people in the venue who belong to the Big Three, so they know about Misha traveling with the army. Exactly. If I hadn't become an ally beforehand, I think Misha would have been killed too. Misha-sama? How could you do that? Although Misha works behind the scenes, she is well known. The name Big Three is not for posturing. It is precisely because those present are powerhouses that the companions are given due credit. People who never valued poor strength, in this strange sense, had a deep trust in Yuki. So it is. In that case, I'm in favor of an alliance. Although I'm unhappy with the concealment so far, the boss has its own considerations, right? We haven't considered it yet, but we lost a guy and were forced to make a promise. Guy? Could it be Guy Crimson? Fighting the Dark Emperor? Even the boss is a mess. No way. I'm glad you survived. Although it caused a stir in another sense, Yuki silenced everyone. There was a lot more to say, but there wasn't enough time. I promise I'll give a full account afterwards, so bear with me for now. Instead of that, it would be better to discuss the consultations for tomorrow's meeting and what operational action should be taken. The official battle strength remaining in Tiju was the intelligence service and the new corps. The upper echelon of intelligence might be a threat, but the grassroots group doesn't have to count as a fighting force at all. The new regiment, though numbering as many as 100,000, was too weak to be a threat, only slightly troublesome in numbers. There are also 20,000 resident guards who act as police, but are not a match for the military ministry in terms of equipment. The disparity in force between the military and the police is akin to making adults the opponents of children. At best, it only serves to stall the pace. However, the Emperor's ace, the Emperor's Knights of the Near Guard, was still the strongest battle force. There are guards in the Intelligence Bureau. So strictly speaking, the only people who should really be on guard are the close guards. Indeed. To be able to stand out in a sequence-snatching battle, the up-and-comer is really strong. Hey, boasting about it. Aren't there traitors like you among the guards? Well, I only believe in power, but not in loyalty to an emperor who only shows off his power. The man laughed as he said this. There were people of their own among the near guards, and by once again perceiving this fact, the congregation understood what an advantageous position they were in. The man who created this atmosphere was slightly short in stature, but had a very unruly attitude. His name is Arios. Although they are otherworldly, they are not summons, they are lost. So, will Demon Lord Rimuru's reinforcements make it tomorrow? The dark-haired maiden asked to Yuki. The ancient city dance dress, she was also a visitor. An ordinary Japanese girl high school student summoned to this world. The ancient city was picked up by Free Combination Chief Handsome Yuki, who had received various assistants. Because of this layer, she trusted and looked up to Yuki. Yeah. It would have taken a lot of time to bring the army over, no matter how much time it took to get there. If it comes from the air, let's say it doesn't really come, does it? As if to overshadow the ancient city's questioning, a big muscular man spoke up. His name was Tolniod, and he was originally a slave fighter. Would have been enslaved to death as a mining slave if not fetched by Damrada. Tolniod was integrated into the army, educated, and learned about the joys of learning. As a result, he was more knowledgeable than he appeared to be and served in a staff role in the hybrid corps. Flying magic is extremely psychologically draining. There may be no problem with the Demon Lord, the underlying monsters may not be able to fly over. Agreeing with Tolniod was a short, teenage girl. The name is Arya. both wizards and heavy warriors. At odds with appearing to be of age, being a disciple of Jidora's teacher, but having undergone transformative surgery himself is a very distinctive character. Tolniod replied breathlessly to Arya. Not that. Even if there was no large army left behind, a surveillance net was spread out over the imperial capital. If a large army presses down from the air, it will be noticed at a distance. Accidentally pointing out the error, Arya was blushing with shyness. Arya is a rare acute child among wizards, with a poorly considered side. All right, all right, all right, all right. A different perspective can be obtained by analyzing the situation through various perspectives. Yuki quickly interjected, pulling the issue back on track. I've been contacted by Rimuru-san through Jidora-sensei, and there will only be a few people coming tomorrow. The contact with Rimuru was made in a hidden magic call from Jidora. Even if tapped by Imperial intelligence, trying to decipher it is impossible because the content is encrypted. Jidora has only conveyed a few key points, and it has yet to be decided who exactly will come. Rimuru is sure to come, so what about the escort? It seems that Rimuru-san also sees no point in demonstrating against Rudra. It's still more about quality than quantity, and the ones that come will definitely only be executives. According to Yuki's preconceptions, it would be about 10 people at most. This, to underestimate the Empire? Or, are you playing with us as allies? Twisting her soft body, the slender beauty tossed her head crookedly in question. This is more of a mouthful than a question. A woman of natural origin is a warrior named Ulka. Contrary to appearances, it is the xenophobe who hides several special skills. Ulka, that's not true. As mentioned earlier, preparing a large army is a lot of work and doing anything will take up a lot of time. That's why it's better to let a few elite people act. This time, it's Tolniod who narrates. Yuki smiled due to the trouble saved. That's what it is. Therefore, it is necessary to set our side of the line. Rimuru only brought the elite, and the question on this side was who to deal with whom. Rimuru-san's thoughts, I plan to hear them at tomorrow's talks. So, it is necessary to sort out our own thoughts first. Like, what to do with Emperor Rudra and such. Yuki's statement was extremely arrogant, not thinking about defeat at all, but looking to the future of victory. It is an anomaly to be negotiating the treatment of the emperor when the coup has not yet succeeded. However, no one has pointed this out. Even Tolniod, who had the property of spitting, put on a grinning face and waited for Yuki to speak. The dwarf kingdom is already aware of the situation, so the hybrid legions now in formation will be able to march towards the imperial capital without any worries. If it's just the remnants of the imperial capital's battle power, it's not easy to win. It's true, the only threat is to the guards. Yeah. Yuki always responded with a smile. In fact, he knew the real threat was someone else. The marshal is an unknown being. Furthermore, if you consider the significance of Guy keeping Yuki alive. This time, how will Rimuru-san act? He's clearly a pacifist who hates to initiate attacks on other countries. Perhaps it's to spare the fallout, but in any case, it's hard to imagine that's the only reason. Yuki then put together the pieces of intelligence and began to organize his thoughts. Thus, he saw the figure of Guy behind Rimuru. If that was the case, then there were monsters in the Empire that could be Guy's opponents, Yuki concluded. Depending on the circumstances, it may be necessary to kill the Emperor, right? Too much of a hurry, Arios. Yeah, it's not good to take exclusive credit. The assembled people got excited and even began to have people threaten to kill the Emperor. Yuki thought that it was too soon to discuss the treatment of the Emperor, but he also thought that it was good that everyone was full of blood and vitality. In fact, talk about what to do with Emperor Rudra is also to be had tomorrow. Jidora opposed the killing, and Damrada dedicated his loyalty to Emperor Rudra. Yuki believes that since these two are important collaborators, they should try to avoid arousing their resentment. Before worrying about these issues, the object of Guy's vigilance was the high probability of Emperor Rudra. If so, reckless provocation is undoubtedly suicidal. There's no need to force yourself to do what's in the fire, the Emperor will just give it to Rimuru-san. Thus, Yuki made a conclusion. Detailed consultations will not take place until Damrata is reached, but a rough draft is already available. The hybrid regiments are used to suppress the imperial capital. The near guards, who were in the way, were met by the multitude present. The people here who had been chosen by Yuki were no less powerful than the knights of the near guard. Not as good as the top runners, but with a numerical advantage. If one person is challenged by several people, this degree of poor strength can be subverted. As for monsters like Rudra and the Marshal, it would be better to leave it to Rimuru, who had come to the war on purpose. That's presumably what Rimuru intended and should have accepted the proposal. Tichu's defense, no matter where it came from, would not receive reinforcements. Of the three major legions, the Mecha Legion was destroyed by Rimuru. The Magic Beast Legion was in the distant air, and even if they came with all their might after knowing the situation, it would all be over by then. The last of the hybrid legions also defected. The plan proceeds to such an extent that one can already say that the general. No need to rush, victory is close at hand. It should have been, but Yuki always had a sense of unease about seeing what was missing. What is it that you're missing? I've kept you waiting. A heavy, calm voice resounded in the atmospheric venue. The people who heard this voice were as tight as if cold water had been poured over them. At last, Damrata. The man, Damrata, arrived at the venue. Instead of wearing the usual merchant's clothes for disguise, Damrata wore a rare imperial uniform. At this moment, Yuki felt at odds. Where's Misha? Dead. The venue went silent for an instant. Anyone who had felt the strain went into a clinical state. Those present had experienced many cultivation fields and were sensitive to this aura. What do you mean, Damrata? Literally. Just a moment ago, Misha was killed by Kondo. Hearing that, Yuki felt the lump that had been lingering in his heart disappear. Seems to be missing something, that sense of unease. Finally came to realize its true nature. Yuki and Damrata's relationship, though not long, involved a lot of ground. The two of them have conspired together in countless, unspeakable evil deeds. The Dark Mother of Darkness, who was able to bring down the underworld that ruled the Empire, was also able to do so with the assistance of Damrata. There was also the Big Three, a secret association that was formed later, and Damrata has been very active as a subordinate. Yuki had thought so, but now it seemed that he had misunderstood. All of it, is being pushed according to the Empire's ideas. The people summoned by Damrata occupy the central organization, which is the triumvirate of secret associations. The purpose is to screen the able and the incompetent. To spread intelligence networks around the world to identify and attract talented people. Protecting the lost is also part of the equation. This is not something that has happened recently. Long ago, the era of the Mother of Darkness began, and the same thing has been happening over and over again. In this way, wouldn't it be possible to say that Yuki was also one of the people who was discovered by Damrata? Find the strong ones and pull into their own side. It was Yuki who caught the eye of Damrata, who acted according to this purpose. It would be too conspicuous to leave Damrata to his own devices. Yuki is nothing more than a sacrifice chosen to be a shield. That is, he was going to use him, but instead he used him. That being said, it does not mean that Damrata has betrayed. Damrata's loyalty is real. In order for the paranoid Yuki to believe this, Damrata was in fact being manipulated by someone, too. Thinking it over, Yuki sighed heavily. I feel pretty cheated. When did it start? What's this about? Damrata asked indifferently. It was the same tone as before, but Yuki sensed a certain decisive difference. He was not pretending to be confused, but was sincerely unable to understand what Yuki was saying. This also means that Damrata has no self-consciousness of being manipulated himself. It's no wonder you don't notice. It's precisely because I'm not self-conscious that I won't be exposed. Thinking this way, while thinking back to the last time. Damrata, at that time, asserted that he did not betray. It was possible to sense that he was speaking from the heart. In fact, it was possible that something had been done after that. If one trusts one's instincts, then Damrata's manipulation should be the closest thing one can get. By the way, the person who decided to trust Damrata was exactly me. I'm not going to say much about that at this point. What's important is the purpose of the guy who sent Damrata here. Someone has manipulated Damrata, and Yuki has determined this in his mind. If one thinks on the basis of this, one would infer that one is in a very serious situation today. During the time it took to deal with Damrata here, their encircling net against Yuki should have been complete. Yuki fell into contemplation. Next to him, Kagali also began to quietly analyze the situation. However, the bloodthirsty young people gathered at the venue were enraged by Damrata's attitude. Damrata, you're being rude to Lord Yuki. Arya condemned. Then Tolniod confronted him. Damrata, what are you thinking? Are you saying that you're going to betray us? Damrata replied lightly. Betrayal? Saying strange things. My loyalty is unwavering and is dedicated to His Majesty Emperor Rudra from the beginning to the end. Che, that's betrayal. Arios said fiercely. Damrata was known for his greed for money and was looked down upon by a section of his peers. There are even people who talk bad behind his back and say he would do betrayals for money. It is precisely because Damrata is such that in this case, more people are angry first than are surprised. The first to act was Tolniod. One hand grabbed Damrata by the neck, threateningly. Don't pretend. I was picked up by you. You are the one who said that instead of dying as a mine slave, one should live for the greater good. I, however, am always grateful to you. But why are you doing this, Gu? Tolniod's actions were actually sheltering Damrata. Get your own hands on the results before anyone else makes a move. However, it was nosy for Damrata. Damrata gently reversed his grip on Tolniod's wrist, manipulating the flow of power and in turn restraining Tolniod. Oh Tolniod, remember what I said. Damrata's eyes were cold, and the calmer Tolniod only felt a chill in his heart. What? Tolniod, who answered with a squeeze of his wrist. For the sake of righteousness, one must be strong. I taught you that, didn't I? You're getting power, that's all. All of the power coming together to one point, Tolniod's wrist crunched. And then it was just that, crushed, my wrist, in a flash. Tolniod groaned, rubbing his wrists as he closed the distance with Damrata. Remove the usual recovery medication and administer the treatment. Damrata didn't pursue Tolniod, standing leisurely. There is not a hint of breakage. In a world of magical creatures where even a broken bone can be cured in a flash, you can't be careless until you've completely rendered your opponent powerless. Without such an understanding, one cannot survive in this world. Looking at Damrata, Yuki narrowed his eyes. He knew that Damrata was strong. It is not surprising that Damrata is a single digit superior to the people gathered in this room. The important thing is that there is no dowsing ability. And, also, to see how far he's been manipulated. In the end, it's a question of whether or not my ability blocking can be lifted. Depending on the situation, Damrata may have to be killed. Yuki deliberately didn't try to stop his companions in order to see through this. Are you the Emperor's dog? I thought I was just a money grubber, but I was completely fooled. However, breaking in alone and revealing your identity doesn't seem like the kind of stupidity you would do if you were a coward. Arios shouted, and with that, the situation changed. That's right, Damrata yo. You have been gracious to me, so I will kill you without feeling the pain. Tolniod, who showed his true colors, challenged Damrata with all his might this time. Too slow. Tolniod gripped the war club hanging around his waist with both hands and swung it down with all his might, but Damrada drilled through with ease. Burrowing into Tolniod's arms in a natural motion, the palm of his hand pushed out gently. At odds with the lightness of the movement, the heavy blows hit Tolniod. Spiral penetration break, a technique to force the refined fighting chi into the opponent's body. Has a directional, penetrating fighting aura that can penetrate weapons and muscles, destroying objects from within. Its power was proportional to the amount of fighting chi, and if it was a spiral penetration break refined by Damrada, it would become a surefire hit that surpassed the power of the tank gun. Tolniod couldn't take it anymore. Blew. Tolniod spat blood and crouched in place. Trying to stand up, but can't get the legs to work. That's for sure, the blow just moments ago damaged Tolniod's guts. How is it possible? You are so strong. Phew, oops. To judge people by their appearance is a pride and arrogance unique to the strong. Does it mean that by hiring you as an escort, you mistakenly think you are stronger? I told you to be strong and not look down on humans. Even if you don't rely on ability, you'll get stronger with exercise. Just like me. Damrada speaks up and throws a spinning back kick to the back of the head. The attacker, who was aiming at Damrada from behind, did not react at all to the kick and was killed instantly by a cracked skull. Easily killed was Arios, one of the strongmen recognized by Yuki. Arios has the unique skill of killer, and has acquired the characteristics of silent movement and presence concealment, which are suitable for assassination, and is a special skill structure for killing, and its strength is considered to be commensurate with the 44th position of the sequence. What was thought to be a man-to-man battle was Arios' true calling, and instead it was buried dryly by Damrada. It is not possible to rely on one's ability alone like this, but it is one's own body and spirit that one can rely on in critical moments. If you ask me, you are of no use at all. Damrada's words were sharp. People who hadn't been ridiculed by the battle skill instructors immediately became angry upon hearing this. It was almost like teaching a weak tone that made anger well up in one's heart. The whole crew's faces suddenly changed, and they unleashed their killing intent on Damrada. In the midst of that, Yuki continued to calmly analyze the situation. A conclusion was then drawn. Sure. Damrada did not betray, was manipulated by someone. Arios is the closer guard, maybe the Emperor's man. Not killing Tolniod, but laying a dead hand on Arios is proof. That is to say, there is still a vestige of free consciousness, but the inability to do what is detrimental to the dominant, this state, right. To be able to manipulate Damrada must be a very powerful dominant force. But still, Damrada drilled a hole and tried to convey the status quo to Yuki. Based on this judgment, Yuki came up with the best answer. Hey, all hands on deck. Now start the evacuation and transfer. You will be given full command to Kagali, and you will rendezvous with the Hybrid Legion. Boss, why run away, execute the traitor, and then rise straight up? No way. Arya's proposal was flatly rejected by Yuki. He smiled as usual and looked around at the whole staff with a serious look. Damrada's purpose is to buy time. That's why it's so long on exposition, because that's what's allowed, right? Permission granted? Kagali asked. Yuki nodded his head in affirmation. Yes. Damrada did not betray. Rather, he's being manipulated by someone. And then that guy, he's going to kill us all here. The crowd reacted to Yuki's words, but the effect of allowing the companions to retrieve their cool judgment had been achieved. Suppressing his killing intent on Damrada, he focused his gaze on the adjutant, Kagali. Kagali's judgment was the same as Yuki's. The instinctive alarm bells kept going off and on, and Kagali understood that she was in a crisis situation. When Yuki gave instructions, she immediately understood what she should do. The situation was urgent, and now was not the time to oppose Yuki's instructions, and Kagali acted. Give up here and head for the Hybrid Legion field camp. But what about Yuki-sama? Don't mind me. I don't think Damrata will let us escape, so I have to be his opponent. Go for it. Yuki takes his back to the full mount and clinches up with Damrata. Go. Understood. Everyone is aware of what they should be doing. Whether Damrata betrayed or not, such things no longer matter. Looking at Yuki's back, everyone had come to this realization. Being strong, they all understood that the thing to do now was not to argue, but to fight for survival. Arya carried the fallen Tolniard. The petite maiden carrying the large man on her back was comical, but no one laughed at them. Users of healing magic healed Tolniard on the side and joined the back row of the team together. Then it just disappeared into the night in such an orderly fashion. A few minutes later, in the spacious conference room, only Yuki and Damrata remain. It's too late to run away, you're always light at the last minute. Yuki-sama underestimated the Intelligence Bureau too much. Maybe. But if you try to struggle, maybe you'll find a way to live? Ridiculous, this is no child's play. Of course, I've always meant it. Is it a dream like conquering the world? Of course. And, you do the same, don't you? Hearing this, Damrata smiled. Yes, that's right, smiling like that from the bottom of your heart with satisfaction. Yuki Kagurazuka, a good host for Damrata. While one can tell that he can't get rid of childish thoughts, there is a cold side to it. Very calculating, not to get bored with Damrata. It is for this reason that Damrata believes in Yuki. It was only then that he noticed that his current self was being manipulated by Kondo. Damrata's loyalty to Emperor Rudra is real. Although Yuki is also recognized, it is no better than Rudra. After all, these don't even need to be compared. Emperor Rudra meant all to Damrata. Damrata, on the other hand, acted as agreed with Rudra. Fulfilling the covenant is what Damrata bets his life to achieve. Damrata has been involved with Rudra for longer than Kondo. It was therefore impossible to deny that Damrata was careless enough to assume that Kondo would not strike out at himself. Damrata understood that he was being viewed with suspicion, and was therefore wary, but Kondo seemed to be more dangerous than Damrata had thought. Having ended his parting with Misha, Damrata's will was dictated by Kondo. It was not understood what method he used, but Damrata could not be undone no matter what means he used. Damrata's consciousness and actions were thus fully grasped by Kondo. Kondo, I didn't think you could manipulate even me. While knowing that the guy's caution was deep to the bone, I didn't expect it to go this far. Still, as expected of Lord Yuki. Since it couldn't be lifted on its own, the only hope left was to rely on Yuki. But this has to be done with attention to the situation Damrata is in, which is very difficult. Whoever looks at it will feel that Damrata has betrayed. The attempt to gain trust in such a situation was so strong that Damrata himself almost gave up. However, Yuki noticed it. Damrata was moved by this fact while saying what he had been allowed to say by Kondo. Lord Yuki, let's show you the strength of the Sequence 2, the deputy commander of the Imperial Emperor's Knights of the Near Guard. This domination is permissive and Damrata's movements are restricted. In this case, Damrata communicated as much information as possible to Yuki. Self-reporting is one of them. As long as Yuki knows all the information he can give, it will come in handy in the future. Damrata was so convinced that he intended to entrust the future to Yuki. When Yuki-sama kills me, it'll be over. The agreement with Lord Rudra, Yuki-sama will also fulfill it, right? Too bad I can't see it for myself. The will of Damrata will surely be inherited by Yuki. For in order to achieve Yuki's ambition, it is necessary to complete Damrata's goal. Damrata did not hold out too high expectations. Don't worry. There's a lot of work to be done, and I'll save you. Ha ha ha. Saying such naive things won't defeat me. The pleasure that rushes up from the heart, even when manipulated, cannot be removed. Damrata does as he pleases and releases this emotion. More than 30 warriors ran wildly through the streets of the imperial capital. Following Yuki's orders, Cagali and the others attempted to escape from the imperial capital by night with the aim of reuniting with the hybrid legion. The camping site for the mixed legions is near the Empire's border with the Kingdom of Dworgen, 500 kilometers southwest of the imperial capital, a distance that would take more than 10 days if one were a traveling merchant. The people of Magic High can move between designated cities in an instant by using the teleportation gates that have been set up all over the imperial capital, a gift that comes with excellent magic technology. However, it was not possible for 100 people to use it at the same time, and the portal was usually heavily guarded as an important facility. Even in the dead of night like this, it was easy to foresee what would happen in a fight. Cagali doesn't hesitate to choose the path she once took. She judged that instead of making a scene here, it was better to straighten out the war effort first. In this group, everyone is a superhuman beyond the rank of regulars. With a few hours of non-stop running, you should reach your destination. Is Lady Cagali all right? Well, no problem. Thank you for your concern, Tyr. Cagali thanked Tyr, the masked maiden who ran beside her. Cagali was the original Demon Lord, and after losing to Demon Lord Leon, remained in a mental body state for decades at a loss. At the time, Cagali was not a spiritual being. The Demon Lord Kazarim had done his best just to remain self-aware. Crossing over that past, the blessing of Yuki had finally gained artificial flesh. Then the workout went smoothly and became powerful. Therefore, she now possessed a fighting ability that could rival that of the higher monsters. In this group of strongmen, too, they are by no means left behind. Yeah? That's good. At times like this, it would be nice if Laplace was around. Yes, if Laplace had been there, he would have defeated Damrada. Boss is strong too. Sure to get the win, back to us. Yes. Well, that is to say. Although Cagali replied with a smile of affirmation, she felt a growing anxiety inside. The alarm bells had been ringing since just now, and Cagali's unease was gradually increasing. Not good. It's not good. This instinct, I don't know how many lives it saved her. Therefore, even though Cagali had no basis, she began to think about what measures she should take to get out of the situation. Then, turning their eyes to their most trusted companions, Tyr and Footman. Call Laplace. Huh? Tell him to come right back. Tyr and Footman might be able to have a conversation through chanting. No matter how far apart, the clowns are closely connected. Laplace was sent as a messenger. It's okay, come on. The alarm bells that only Cagali could hear grew louder. That meant there was no time left, and after making that judgment, Cagali ignored Tyr and gave a second order. All hands, split up from here on out. Act according to your own judgment, survival first. With the aim of reuniting with the hybrid legion, the last words were not spoken, and she understood it was too late. That's amazing. I thought I'd completely eliminated my aura, thanks to you for noticing. The man in military uniform said so while emerging from the darkness. It's Lieutenant Kondo. It wasn't just Kondo. From the rooftops of the buildings across the street, people kept jumping down wordlessly. The number is about 50. Yet, every one of them could feel the overwhelming breath. The Imperial Emperor's Order of the Near Guard. Yes. Don't be needlessly resistant, surrender. In this way, the honor of dying for His Majesty the Emperor is given to you. Yeah, you admit it. Lieutenant Kondo, you are the head of the Imperial Emperor's Order of the Near Guard. Even after being identified, Kondo was still expressionless. Neither negative nor positive, but it was enough for Cagali. Cagali and their rest gathered while guarding the knights who surrounded them. At this point, fighting is inevitable. The Near Guard knights were fully armed in legendary gear. Even with equal strength, the gap in equipment is still too great. Despite being at an overwhelming disadvantage, none of Yuki's men would give up lightly at a time like this. Come on. It's a good way to save time. Yes. Let's see what I can do with a close guard. Tolniod, who was still dying a moment ago, spoke up and Arya followed suit. A person with extraordinary strength should look like he or she should, but he or she will not simply give up. And among them, Cagali desperately analyzed the situation. The odds of all surviving are infinitely close to zero. The goal of the tactical victory at this stage is to get more companions to converge with the hybrid legions. For this, time needs to be bought. Before Yuki defeated Damrada. Before Laplace rushed back to help, buy valuable time. Cagali realizes that this is what she is meant to do. Well, what would have happened if one of them had made it? Thinking aside, Cagali took a step towards Kondo. Ho ho? Are you going to be my opponent? Yeah. Let me confirm the strength of the chief near guard. Saying so, but Cagali was well aware that she was nowhere near as strong as Kondo. Cagali's purpose was to make herself the bait. Winning is impossible, at best, to buy time. Cagali concentrated and posed towards Kondo. Kondo, on the other hand, didn't look at Cagali and looked around at the battle and sighed helplessly. I don't like to do useless work, and I'm not going to stall for time with you. You have to understand that you can't win a war with spiritual will. Well, maybe. With prayer, miracles can happen. Ridiculous. The original demon lord talks in his sleep. Hearing that, Cagali smacked her tongue. Only a few of his companions knew that his original identity was that of a demon lord, and Kondo revealed it easily. That is, this level of intelligence was nothing more than trivial to him. You're really being underestimated. No, I don't think so. Let me tell you something, I reckon your intention is to rendezvous with a mixed legion, but it won't work. Just a moment ago, His Majesty the Emperor had personally organized a crusading army to march. What did you say? It was an extraordinary state of affairs for the Emperor to go on an expedition. But what Cagali cared about was the word crusade army. Of course, it's only the strong who matter. First of all, whether or not one swears loyalty to His Majesty Rudra, a mongrel that doesn't even have the possibility of evolution is not going to come in handy. What does this mean? Can't you understand? You have survived until now only because you still have the possibility of evolution, all in the plans of His Majesty Rudra. Nonsense. Are you trying to say that our plans have all been seen through? Cagali got emotional, Kondo said with a bored sweep of Cagali. Stupid question. Do you think you can fool me in the imperial capital? Inside Cagali, a dim fire of anger flared. The name of the fire, shame. With her unique skill as a planner, Cagali has been making all kinds of plans and getting them executed successfully. Despite the successive failures of the plan because of Rimuru, it was Cagali's pride to be Yuki's partner and to be Yuki's strategist. Kondo, on the other hand, scoffed at that. How could a human? You mean, Yuki Kagurazuka, right? A strong rage washed over her, and Cagali's eyes seemed to go blank. Still, she could see that it was Kondo's ploy. If you let your anger run wild, you will lose battles that you could have won. The evidence is that Footman, not knowing if he was provoked by Cagali's anger, lost his sanity and attacked Kondo as he had. In the clown troupe, Footman, who prides himself on having the highest attack power, unleashed a great magic bomb, completely unconcerned that the streets would be destroyed. Kondo ducked out of the way easily, but an alarm went off on the street side, feeling like it was going to cause a big commotion. At this rate, not only the close guards, but also the guardsmen and the watching crowds would flock to the scene. When this became the case, there was no need for Cagali and others to worry about it. As long as someone was in the way, it was considered an enemy to rule out. Kondo, they should be well aware of these things too. But why would Kondo allow such a thing to happen? That was Cagali's query. Settle down and think calmly. This guy, just trying to piss me off. Since she saw through Kondo's attempt, she would just have to accompany him. Thinking so, Cagali suppressed her anger. At this point, a wave of unease came up as if she had missed something. Wait? Damrata was manipulated by someone. If this is Kondo's. It wasn't just footmen, Tyr had joined the war. A surprising amount of fighting is taking place between the surrounding Konoha and Yuki's companions. Kondo, on the other hand, was completely unfazed by the situation. At unknown times, Kondo's right hand gripped a pistol and his left hand held a knife, coping with the onslaught. Facing footmen and Tyr, the two Majins who were able to override the demon lord, they still maintained a stoic attitude. Although Kondo was predicted to be a formidable foe, the reality was beyond prediction. Undoubtedly stronger than Damrata, Cagali reacquainted herself with the horrors of Kondo. Kondo simply held the gun and showed no signs of wanting to shoot, using the knife alone to simultaneously oppose footmen and Tyr. That knife, in Cagali's opinion, was also a famous knife. In fact, what Cagali didn't know was that the construction of the knife was called a naval taser-type military knife, and the key blade was engraved with a beautiful blade that was so beautiful that one couldn't help but look at it. This is a family heirloom passed down from generation to generation by the Kondo family, not a bargain for the layman to hold. Rightfully so, this knife is not a weapon that can be wielded with one hand. Kondo, on the other hand, held the hilt of the knife with his left hand and swung it with one hand. This was not some special genre, and a clear-eyed person could tell at a glance that he hadn't played up to his original strength. This man is dangerous. Taking those two as opponents, but not moving the real thing at all. But why? It would have been more serious if the intention was to kill. So you didn't do it, did you really see any value in using us? So it's true. Then, Cagali came up with the answer. Shouted. Be careful. Kondo may use some means to manipulate people. Exactly. Thought Kondo would deny it, but dryly admitted it. It gave Cagali the creeps. How dare this man expose himself? No, since we already doubt it, there is no point in denying it. Expressing affirmation will, on the contrary, increase our vigilance. What? Can't figure out why? Cagali sank suspiciously into a mire of thoughts, unable to understand Kondo's thoughts, unable to see what was right to do. Since you can't win the fight, it's best to follow through with the initial battle of delaying time. She thought so, but couldn't figure out why Kondo would go along with this battle plan. No, that's weird. This man said at the outset that he had no intention of stalling with us, and why dash? Is that so? It turns out. It was only at this point that Cagali finally learned the true horror of Kondo. Every line of dialogue makes sense, and Cagali understands that Kondo is completely dictating the course of events by mixing lies into the conversation. You're also stalling for time. Did you finally notice? I'm playing this boring time-stretching trick with you. Gar. It's not easy to see through with your thinking. Despite desperately trying to stay calm, Kondo's prodding irritated Cagali. Don't just say. Do you know why I'm called an intelligence-feeding freak? You just said that too, didn't you? I can manipulate people, then why didn't you think it would be easy to gain the knowledge of the manipulated? What's this guy talking about? Cagali marveled. If Kondo was lying, it would be too childish and awkward. But if true, it would be tantamount to divulging important secrets. It's hard to imagine that this prudent man would act in a way that would expose the undercard. What a pain in the ass. Even for me, it's not like I can see through everything. The original intention was to make contact with you after leaving the outskirts of the city. It's a shame that Tiju suffered damage, but it's not easy for me to stay in a fight like this. Stay strong. Ho, 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 what an underestimation. Irritated by Kondo's words, Tyr and footman became agitated. And that's just winning the other side's strategy, another bad move. It was with that understanding that Cagali got anxious. Calm down, you two. Don't let the other person's words disturb the mood. Cagali shouted, trying to stop the two from storming off. Kondo boredly skimmed Cagali, then glanced at the pistol again, not knowing what to think, and stowed it in his arms. What a pain in the ass. Let me deprive you of your fighting power without killing you. Come on. The moment Kondo held the saber in both hands, the aura changed for one. It's a scent that's unique to high people. Tear, let me do it here. Take it, human. The two men's breaths swelled and the people fighting around them stopped fighting as if they were overwhelmed by their chi. Kondo took a step forward on his left foot and raised his sword to his right shoulder, posing in a hakyoji stance, waiting for the enemy to attack. Footman, on the other hand, seems to have completely abandoned the defense and adopted the stance of specializing in striking, letting the whole body cover the fighting aura and transform itself into a giant projectile for the assault. The chubby figure, however, showed unimaginable agility as Footman rolled agilely. Then, accelerating while taking a leap from the ground, he began bouncing around Kondo, continuing the irregular movement, gradually accelerating. Ho ho, 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 ho. How about, if you can, you try to see what I'm doing? Convinced that he had accelerated to his full strength, Foreman conjured up his ultimate move to Kondo. The true face of Footman's power is a unique skill called the increaser. The essence of this power is that of increase. Whether it's volatility or quality, it can increase at its own will. Accelerating just by jumping, the weight of the self gradually increases and the weight becomes not in keeping with what it looks like. Just drive this momentum into each other and either opponent will be crushed. Take it, the angry outbursts fly apart. With absolute confidence and destructive power, Footman closed in on Kondo. However, Kondo's expression didn't fluctuate and he only made one sword move. I'm proud of you for using this thunderbolt. It was only after it was over that the calming voice was heard. Footman's hands and feet were cut off at a moment's notice, a high-speed trick that no one could see. It would not have been possible to do so without an overwhelming strength gap. Only the head was still attached to the body, and bright red blood spurted from the broken limb. Although Footman is not yet dead from this, I'm afraid it will be difficult to continue fighting. Your name is Tear, right? I'll bandage the man's arms and legs and stop the bleeding on his head. It'll be a pain in the ass if he dies. Kondo said blandly. That right hand gripped back to the pistol, back to the position it was in at the beginning. Either way, the gesture was a sign that there was no intention of continuing to be their opponent. What are you thinking? Won't kill you. Especially you, Kagali, no, the original demon Lord Kazarim. You still have use, so you can't be killed. Stupid, to do something like this and want me to help you? Humph, no need to ask your permission. I told you, didn't I? I can manipulate people. What a hateful man, Kagali stared at Kondo with a hateful look. Kondo's statement is so irritating that it's clear that he's thinking the right thing, but Kondo's approach makes himself uneasy and wonder if he's thinking the wrong thing. Kondo's every word made Kagali restless. At this point, the gun Kondo was holding flashed a red light. Seeing the red light, the corners of Kondo's mouth rose slightly. That is, a very, very small and unassuming glimmer of a smile. Can this man also laugh? Kagali wondered while the biggest alarm sounded in her heart. Procrastination, by the way, is this real? It was too late to realize it until now. Kagali was disgusted with herself for being played like this, and even so, she was still exploring the best options. There was no doubt that Kondo had assembled his hand cards, though there was no telling what those hand cards were. There was no escape now, and it was difficult to stall for any more time. In that case, there is only one recourse. Kagali's only option was to remove the seedling that might endanger her companion, that is, suicide. Kagali is determined to prevent intelligence leaks by dying. That being said, Kagali, as an undead elf clan, would not perish in the true sense of the word. Although this flesh will be lost, it can be boarded again with others to gain eternal life. Footman and Tear should have sensed Kagali's thoughts as well. They were undead elf clans like Kagali, immortal in the true sense of the word. 3 men besieging Kondo at the same time should serve their purpose while keeping Kagali's thoughts from being exposed. Even with the loss of flesh, one can avoid the worst state of affairs if one can escape completely. That's Kagali's judgment, and the trump card saved for last. It's a rare time for Yuki-sama to get his hands on flesh. It's going to take a while to settle down again, but it's better than losing everything. Even though it's dragging Footman and Tear down, I'll prepare them for tougher flesh next time. Kagali made her decision. After that, just trust Laplace to find a way to do something about it. Kondo is really stronger than expected, and judging by Kagali at this stage, Kondo and Laplace are not on par. No, it's possible that Kondo is slightly stronger. Even if they succeeded in converging here, there was no way to ensure victory, and it would be really bad strategy to still implicate Laplace in danger under the circumstances, Kagali judged so. The more worrying thing is how Kondo is manipulating people. Although it was tempting to wait to see this before running away, it would be dangerous to be too greedy. Kagali shed her confusion and immediately put it into action. I'm so underestimated by the humans. Footman, Tear, stop playing with him and give him a taste of my true power as a demon lord. Kagali let the demon chi spread all over her body, making a power that went beyond the limits. This temporary flesh would not be able to endure for long, at most for a few minutes if it was messed up like this. But then there's no need to worry about being suspected of suicide. Foreman and Tier 2, seeing Kagali in this state, understood the battle plan. Just losing my arms and legs won't stop me. This girl can go on too. It's been so long since I've been able to show my stuff, my heart is pounding. Like matching Kagali, Footman also rounded his body and started jumping. Then Tear, like Kagali, began to liberate the monster aura. In the center of the imperial capital, the huge demonic aura gradually expanded. If Kondo could make it look like this was a special attack with the intention of going down together, Kagali and their fight would be a success. However, Kondo didn't even frown in the face of this situation. Methodically, he stowed his saber and confirmed the status of the pistol. He said, "I don't think so," as if I were throwing cold water on Kagali. It seems that only the spirit body can survive. This statement is impossible to ignore. The people who knew about Kagali's race were also only Yuki among their companions, ultra-secret information that even Damrada didn't know, and then again it should be something that Kondo couldn't know. 4. Why do you know this? The so-called battle is over before it begins. The total annihilation of the Mecha Legion was due to the negligence of the enemy in gathering intelligence. Doesn't it take failure for granted to storm off without even knowing the right situation? Don't you think so? That being said, your men have been a disappointment. They were clearly given the best possible time, but lost to a new demon lord who had been installed in the district. It's ridiculous to call it a demon lord too. What did you say? But you guys lost just fine. I also had a basic grasp of what was going on all over there. After all, a more interesting existence than Clayman was born. I asked you what that meant. Kagali's anger erupted. Already no longer considered calming herself down, as the hatred of Lieutenant Kondo had made her forget herself. Kondo's statement amounted to a confession that it was he who had manipulated Clayman. Thinking about it this way, Clayman doesn't know when it started and the behavior gradually spiraled out of control. According to Laplace's report, the tendency got bigger decades ago. Kagali thought it was just caused by the stress of being a demon lord, and even thought she was overthinking it. However, if these were caused by Kondo, the situation would be different. A self-developed battle plan that fails because of human obstruction is intolerable. What's more, the once favored Clayman, if he also died because he was manipulated by Kondo. Unforgivable, absolutely unforgivable. Kagali's anger could no longer be restrained, and Footman, who was particularly sensitive to the emotions of anger, reacted to Kagali's anger by allowing it to increase further. It turned out, ironically, to be exactly what Kondo had expected. No, that's what Kondo is all about. How naive. In battle, yet emotional, It's only because of this level of awareness that it's so easy to fall into the trap. Kondo said so and pulled the trigger. Ah! Pow! Kagali popped spasmodically as the sound came softly. There was no bloodshed. Because it was a very special bullet that affected not the flesh but the spirit. Its name is the Curse Bomb of Domination. It was a secret treasure bestowed by Emperor Rudra, and one of Kondo's killer weapons. The domination spell bomb was given a portion of Rudra's powers, with the effect of dominating and manipulating others. However, one could only dominate one person at a time, and the likelihood of resistance was high for those with strong spiritual powers. There is a surplus of bullets on hand, but the usefulness and timing of the bullets need to be carefully considered. Failure to do so would not only expose the hand to the enemy, but also lose a piece. Those who want to dominate the Demon Lord class need to fire their bullets while the opponent is asleep or in an exuberant state, after being swept away by lust, or being consumed by negative emotions such as anger or lamentation. You can finally exercise domination by shooting a domination spell when the other person is in this state. It took some effort, but it was in line with the plan. Kagali, get your companions to abort the act of fighting. After all, you're so careful, you've already carved a spell on the summoner, haven't you? I see, Lord Kondo. Don't call me that. Just call me Lieutenant. Yes, Lieutenant Kondo. Yes, sir. Just like that, Kagali fell into Kondo's hands. Then, as Kondo had expected, the spells were engraved on the souls of all of Yuki's companions. Tyr and Footman, too, were unable to disobey the words of Kagali, the commanding officer. There are also those who do not have the spell engraved on them, but they understand that the situation is unfavorable and that even if their companions kill each other, they will only die for nothing, so it is better not to resist being caught. The darkness of the Tiju restored calm. To hate your own powerlessness. What is called justice is something that exists only in the midst of the multitude and is united by a stronger will, as is the ideal. Your ambition has turned to morning dew in the face of His Majesty Rudra's righteousness, that's all. That is, the absolute law of the weak against the strong. Kondo was well aware of this. However, without the awareness of being trampled upon, one is not even qualified to be ambitious. Therefore, let me remember your remorse. Kondo himself was alive with a sense of consciousness, so he wouldn't look down on people like Kagali. If it is himself who loses, he will face the same fate, which he has learned from his own experience. Yuki and Damrada clinch and engage in a fierce battle. It's not sure how many times the two have alternated offense and defense. Facing Damrada with a straight punch to the face, Yuki unloads with a palm strike. He then tries to reverse Damrada's wrist, but Damrada won't let him, and slashes at Yuki. And Yuki, who expected the hangknife, throws a double leg kick while leaning back on his upper body. Damrada, who senses Yuki's movements, drops back down to his feet and throws a sweeping leg kick, but it seems Yuki sees that one coming too and leaps forward with a spinning back kick to the side of Damrada's head. But that leg kick misses. Damrada has closed the distance and stood up. Going beyond the human realm and strike back with a refined martial art. The offensive and defensive plays go on, and from the sidelines, it seems as if you're watching a well-designed action play, with every move in order. But at a pace that the eyes of the common man cannot keep up with. Unfortunately, there was no audience present, except that it would have been difficult to find a strong man who could appreciate the battle. A fight between high-level fighters based on the flesh of 1,000 hammers. Actually, the fight was more than that. Yuki tries to communicate with Damrada, using chanting rather than dialogue. Damrada also tried to respond by assisting Yuki in action. Several times in the fight, unnecessary physical contact was made in order to exchange information at that moment. Really, is it finally connected? I didn't realize that Damrada, even you have acquired an ultimate skill. It took me so much effort to convey my thoughts. Was it already there when you met me? Just a borrowed item. Of course, when I met Lord Yuki, I already had an ultimate skill. It didn't come to light because it was barely used, Damrata rounded up thoughtfully. And Yuki could only smile bitterly. Now that I've awakened my ultimate skills, I realized that there is an absolute class difference between those and my unique skills. And there is a word in Damrata's answer that cannot be ignored. Borrowed item? What does that mean? Originally, abilities were acquired by themselves. Just because there are people with creative abilities like Yuki doesn't mean you can create something out of nothing. Yuki simply feeds on his own desires and gains abilities by changing the form of his soul power. That is why it is impossible to ignore the fact that capacity can be transferred. Damrata replied. As it literally is. My power is nothing but a gift from the Emperor. Is it possible to do such a thing? I understand your doubts, but I'm the witness. You have to understand, it's possible. That's what I'm talking about. Since that's all said and done, Yuki had to agree. In this way, the next question arises. Is the transfer of that skill for anyone? How so? Damrata smiled. Ordinary humans, not to mention ultimate skills, can't even be a vessel for unique skills. Just accommodating the powers that be requires a huge amount of energy. Therefore, we must transform our flesh like the otherworldly man. I'm relieved to hear you say that. I thought the Emperor was having a great sale on my powers, so I was anxious. Ha ha ha, it's not happening yet. And it is His Majesty's plan to achieve this goal. I see, and Yuki understood. Is that why we collect the strong? Exactly. Humans, too, will evolve at the end of their practice. The race itself changes and becomes immortal. Yuki-sama, who has reached the realm of saints, knows this too, right? Sort of. Yuki has also experienced that from human beings to immortals and then to saints, it is impossible to achieve this with ordinary cultivation. Even among the top 10 saints of the Western countries, the only ones who have reached the saints in the true sense of the word are only Hinata and Sare. It is only after man has evolved into an immortal that he has been able to break away from the framework called human communication and become personally connected to the world. Those who have reached this stage will be gathered together to form the Imperial Emperor's Knights of the Near Guard, and under the screening of His Majesty Rudra, it can be said that this is the minimum passing line. Centaur is the minimum pass line? Well, yes. Lord Yuki had also fought with Guy, so he should be able to understand how powerful he was, right? Even for a saint, there is no possibility of victory. Well, sort of. Guy's strength was abnormal, and Yuki, who had actually fought, was well aware of that. A half-dragged powerhouse couldn't even do it against Demon Lord Guy Crimson, right? To defeat Guy, awakening an ultimate skill is the minimum requirement. Is this an ultimate skill? This is content that Yuki can also accept. After acquiring an ultimate skill himself, he felt it even more strongly. Only an ultimate skill can counter an ultimate skill. Yes, His Majesty Rudra is well aware of that. Therefore, trials are given to those who have reached the level of immortals to promote their further awakening, in order to train them into a vessel capable of giving them ultimate skills. It's a mess. But I'd do the same if I were you. It's a great help to understand so quickly. Yuki and Damrata looked at each other and smiled. Although it was a topic that normal people couldn't understand, Yuki saw through the method and it made sense. Once the methodology is established, it will probably be possible to raise a large number of extreme ability awakeners. It's not a good feeling to be taken one step ahead, but Yuki thinks it's a good idea to get recognition where it's due. More than that, the specificity of Rudra, which is integral to this approach, is the problem. The fact that Rudra can empower others is truly astonishing. This is an example of the greatness of His Majesty Rudra. Those who reach the realm of the sage, His Majesty Rudra grants the ultimate skill of substitution. Damrata's thoughts were filled with pride, and one could feel his respect for Emperor Rudra, and Yuki couldn't help but smile bitterly. While Damrata still swore loyalty to Yuki, it was still different from the loyalty dedicated to the Emperor. Even though Yuki knew that was the case, he still felt that Damrata should hide his respect for the emperor. Only, the usual Damrata would never make such a mistake, and this time he did so deliberately, knowing full well. So did Rudra start the war to awaken his men? The reasoning is this. The previous battle was thwarted by Veldora and suffered a setback, but the battle was fought that way. A few have evolved into immortals, with more battle power to add than to lose. Still patient enough, Yuki felt admiration at the same time as jealousy. Like this, the two men exchanged chanting words while fighting each other. Then finally, Yuki's power broke through Damrata's mental barrier. "Oh, we did it. I found it, the core that manipulates your power." "That would be great. Can it be lifted?" "Well, no problem. But will it be exposed to Kondo when it's lifted?" "I guess we'll be exposed." "It's okay. Then let it go in one breath." Yuki and Damrata are not fighting pointlessly. Damrata knew about Yuki's power blocking, and he believed that this power could lift the domination imposed by Kondo. Yuki also saw right through Damrata's thoughts, and without anyone else having to say much, had been testing out Damrata's condition. Yuki then used the newly awakened power to try to bring Damrata back to his former self. Yuki has acquired the ultimate skill King of Greed and specializes in seizing it. Just by making contact with the opponent, the life-snatching palm could seize energy, and even if it was just a fist fight, it could still accumulate damage on the opponent. It can be magical or physical, and depending on the opponent, the nature of the energy that can be seized varies. But what remains constant is that the seized energy can be used for itself. But in the face of Damrata, the raider's palm did not work. Damrata's strength was excellent, maintaining his best form even when manipulated by Kondo. "It has nothing to do with my own will, and I'm trying my best to hinder Yuki's actions. This was made possible by the Emperor's ultimate power to grant vicarious power. From this, the protection of the soul was exerted on Damrata. No matter what kind of mental attack is ineffective, an absolute mental barrier. No matter what kind of defense can penetrate, absolute physical destruction. Using two opposing forces as twin wings makes Damrata an undefeated presence. Kondo was able to dominate Damrata because the Emperor had granted the domination spell bomb. A higher level than the acting power. If vicarious power had not been a borrowed force, Damrata would not have been dominated. In order to lift this troublesome vicarious right, Yuki drove the ability blockade to shatter Damrata's mental barrier. That's when the dominating spell bomb that was inserted into the soul of Damrata was finally discovered. After confirming with Damrata, Yuki concentrated his strength in one breath. The palm of life. The bottom of Yuki's palm struck Damrata's chest. This strike was well controlled and only shattered the bullet. It was really straightforward and Damrata was thus restored to freedom. That's very helpful, Yuki-sama. Don't rely too much on others, I'm more worried about Kagali and the others. I'm going over there. What are you going to do? Allow me to accompany you. I'm going to show up with Demon Lord Raimuru tomorrow anyway, and it's even more dangerous to easily return to Kondo's men if I have to take advantage of the momentum to stage a coup. Indeed, there's no need to hide it. Yuki laughed, and Damrata responded with a smile. Let's go then. Yes. Yuki turned and walked towards the door, and Damrata nodded and followed. But this moment. Why don't you clean up the strangers and just hang around, Damrata? Or, do you really want to betray Lord Rudra? Hearing the cold voice, Yuki tensed and stopped moving. The real crisis that opens here. No sound was made. Somehow, at some point, she was already standing there. An overwhelming strongman's breath. The pale blue hair, stunning the beauty of a celestial being. What should have been a first meeting, Yuki was familiar with the beauty scent. That was the breath of the man opposite the imperial curtain. Known as the Marshal, the figure who sat beside the Emperor. Lord Veal grinned. Damrata muttered, and Yuki listened but felt very loud. Veal grinned? Don't you mean? At this moment, Yuki realized that his face had become spastic. This world is known as the strongest dragon species. In front of this existence, Yuki unconsciously compared his own strength. Hurts my brain. It hadn't felt that way when I saw Veldora before. It wasn't a matter of winning or losing in this subdivision anymore. To go head-to-head with such an opponent would be tantamount to suicide. Even though Yuki realized this, he didn't give up. If it doesn't work on the front, then you can avoid it and play a dirty trick. He guessed that if he made good use of the cards in his hand, the possibility of victory was still high. I never thought that His Excellency the Marshal would be the true dragon race. That way, we'll know why Guy won't go out in person. Hey, it's rare for a human to not TBE imid in the face of me. You deserve a compliment. Thank you very much. By the way, it would have been nice to leave me alone. I don't care. Only it's not me who's looking for you. It's my dear sir. Veal grinned, finished, and took a step back. It was only then that Yuki noticed the man's aura. He couldn't help but widen his eyes and stare at the figure. Standing beside Veelgrind was a man in a costume that was almost astronomical in value. It was a familiar face. Masayuki? No, it's not possible. Are you? Exactly the same as Masayuki Honju, Yuki thought to himself, but then noticed a few differences. The most obvious is the hair color. The man had brilliant, dazzling blonde hair. By contrast, Masayuki just usually dyed his hair blonde, which was supposed to be a Japanese black teal color. If you look closely, the eyes are also different. Masayuki's eyes looked as loose as if they were less rooted, while the man's gaze was as domineering as if he wanted to see through everything. To not tense one's nerves was to be swallowed up by his aura. In the face of such verve, it is impossible to imagine that they are the same person. It's a different person, this one. Convinced of this, Yuki thought of the man's true identity. Since Veelgrind calls him dear sir, there is only one identity. The Emperor Rudra? That's right, Yuki-sama. This is the Emperor at the top of the Empire, Lord Rudra. Answering Yuki was Damrada, who, as a gesture of no hostility towards Rudra, did not care to get his clothes dirty and knelt down in place. Yuki didn't accuse him. To Damrada, Rudra's importance is above his own, and it is understood, if not stated, that the question is why Rudra is here. It's amazing. I didn't think that the noble majesty would come to a place like this. Are you idle? Yuki asked as if teasing Rudra. And Rudra wasn't angry, just extremely natural in his reply. Very busy. It's not the time to play around when the win against Guy comes down to the wire. The surprise was with Damrada. He didn't expect Rudra to talk to an inferior, and never expected Veelgrind to tolerate it. Hey, then don't be lazy. Don't talk too much, and become his men. Doing so will not deprive you of your will. That's the order. From the distant heavens, commanded the prostrate little man on the ground. This was the kind of person Yuki hated the most, but for some reason there was a feeling of being unable to disobey. Is this thought induction? It's a bit like the domination exerted by Mariabelle, but it's incomparable in strength. It's a hateful power, but Yuki has power blocking and can ignore any command that comes from his power. It should have been. Nope. It's not that simple of an empowerment. Knees couldn't help but want to bend, and Yuki understood as he fought. This is divinely inspired power. Note, one meaning divine power and the other meaning transcendent leadership charisma. But in the following, it can be seen that Rudra did not use the ability when speaking, and it can be seen that Yuki took this innate temperament as a skill and turned it into a divinely taught ability, i.e., the misunderstanding in Yuki's mind was directly expressed in words. This is a double entendre, so it's up to you to understand whether it's the effect of your ability or your natural temperament. Even the overpowering dominion that can make all things obey. Yuki fought tooth and nail to resist. Bah, you've got some nerve. I didn't expect this kind of trick when I came up. Yuki exasperatedly spat out a mouthful of spit mingled with blood. Dominating was his specialty, and being preempted made Yuki furious, but that's the right thing to do. Angry feelings are exactly what blocked the evidence of Rudra's domination. Yuki flashed a fearless smile and returned Rudra's glance. However, Rudra looked at Yuki with a puzzled expression. What's wrong? Is it so incredible that your own power doesn't work? No. Rudra looked back at Veilgrind with a puzzled look on her face. Then, cackling, Veilgrind replied to Rudra. No way, Rudra. This child bathed in your dominance and mistakenly thought he had suffered a mental attack. Be more gentle with him, or he will be broken before he becomes a minister. Don't you think that's a good idea, too? There are few people who can talk to you as equals, and it's not because the power differential is hard to grasp. Rudra was at a loss for words. Veilgrind, on the other hand, revels in it. Yuki, on the other hand, was furious at the shame of hearing the two's conversation. You gotta be kidding me. Don't you see me at all? In that case, let me take away your composure. After a moment of regaining his composure, Yuki spoke up. All right, I'll take it. Indeed, you are the rulers of this world. But with such power, I cannot conquer the world, I am impotent in my opinion. Pick on each other as usual. And it was Veilgrind who responded. How arrogant. Nah, Rudra, really kill him. Even if such a brat was included in the camp, it wouldn't make much difference in terms of coping with Chi's battle prowess. It'll just be unpleasant, won't it? In contrast to Veilgrind, Rudra is generous and open-minded. Don't say that. Even if it seems insignificant to you, cultivating it can make you a useful pawn. Besides, isn't it nice to be defiant? Just like the kitten that refuses to get close to people, doesn't it have its cuteness? I like it a lot. This totally considers Yuki a lowly little person. Yuki hummed boredly. The key Rudra was unfazed and there was no point in provoking. In that case, the only way to speak is with strength. Since Veilgrind was present, it couldn't take much time. The first move was the strongest attack, and even Veilgrind was suppressed in one fell swoop. After deciding, Yuki set up a pose. I have no interest in submitting to someone weaker than myself when you said you'd become your servant. If you want me to obey, you have to show proportionality. Yuki shouted and began to move. No more crap. The acting is also pointless. The King of Greed, the research pole power, will restore the original size of his own desires to power. Yuki took it for granted that the power he had taken from Mariabelle could awaken him to his greed. Because of this, Yuki had no doubt that he was the strongest one who had acquired the power of the Great Sin System, the King of Greed. Who's it going to be? No need to think, from the beginning there was only the single option of Rudra. Dominate Rudra and then hold Veilgrind hostage. Cross this crisis and it will turn into a blessing. It's this tough way of thinking that has been the driving force behind Yuki's success so far. This time too, it will be a victory and a big step forward. That's all Yuki could think about, and he ran at a brisk pace, pulling in close enough to be just a few punches away from the opponent. In the blink of an eye, Yuki tried to touch Rudra with his hand. The right hand unleashes one of the powers of the King of Greed, sucking life, and at the same time uses the power to block. In this way, a vicious attack could be formed across the opponent's boundaries. This was the original use of the death-snatching palm, which was different from Damruda's time, and Yuki attacked with an aura that didn't matter if he killed his opponent. If Rudra is dead, then focusing on Veilgrind again is. With two strong enemies, escape is also difficult, but if there is only one, there is always a way. If Rudra survives, then the next step is to make a real attack with your left hand. The effect exerted on the left hand is worrying, stimulating the other person's feelings, a terrible power that even memory can affect. It is a more sinister, more powerful force of domination than the desires of Mariabelle. With this two-stage attack continuum, Yuki was intent on killing a way out alive. However, The idea was easily crushed. You won't be able to do anything to Rudra in front of me. With a speed that even Yuki, who had raised his physical abilities to the limit, couldn't see, Veilgrind stepped forward. Then easily pops Yuki's right hand out of the way. Yuki was stunned. While it was surprising that the right hand palm strike was defended, what was even more impactful than that was the energy flowing in from Veilgrind. It was enough to make Yuki vomit blood in rushing waves. The mere moment of the encounter, the huge monster element that exceeded the capacity limit, eroded Yuki's body. Sensing the danger in this instant, Yuki forcefully twisted his body to pull away. If the reaction had been a little bit slower, Yuki's body would have been completely destroyed, right? It wasn't that Veilgrind had done anything, rather the opposite, nothing but remove Yuki's hand. Even so, Yuki was wounded, but the reason was that he had exploded himself, only because he had seized a huge amount of energy that he could not fully control through the life-grabbing palm. With tears and nosebleeds while spitting blood, Yuki thought so. How, maybe? So simple it's more than I can handle. Now my limit is enough to hold a dozen elves, and it overflows in an instant. As if complaining to the gods, Yuki grumbled. The dreaded Veilgrind. It was obvious that so much energy had been taken away, but it didn't hurt, it didn't matter. That is, in the face of Yuki's attack, there wasn't even a need for defense. There's no way out of this, Yuki realized. Damn, the power differential is surprisingly large, and it's no wonder it doesn't put me in the eye. This is undoubtedly on the same level as Guy. Yuki understands this, and only now does he know the height of the world. It was precisely because of the awakening of ultimate skills that this desperate rank gap was understood. To go on the offensive yourself is an act of suicide. In that case, one can only wait and see what the enemy does. Don't be such a jerk. Wouldn't it be a pleasure to have me out there, answering your wish to know about my power? What a bad habit, Rudra. If you get hurt, it'll be boring. Leave it to me. Oh, that's not acceptable. Right? This is provocation. This kind of practice, which is like taking away a good show from him, made it impossible for Yuki to keep quiet. Ha 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 ha, you're a good man. If I had accepted reality, I would have lost. But I'm not going to give up easily, don't think I'll simply surrender. Yuki knew that this was just a case of not giving in, but he still tried his best. Now that it is understood that no matter what you can't win against Veilgrind, then all that can hold on to is your own reserve. Even if you die as a result, you have to carry out your own capriciousness in the end. Yuki glared at Rudra. Facing the sight of Yuki, Rudra smiled amusingly. Sure enough, let me be your opponent. That being said, I am the best at domination. If you can bear it, you're a winner. You can go wherever you want. Hearing this pleading offer, Yuki narrowed his eyes. Rudra's words were serious. In all seriousness, it didn't matter even if Yuki got away with it. Yuki didn't see through Rudra's intentions, but in fact Rudra was thinking very simply. After accumulating this experience, Yuki will gain even more power, right? On that basis, it would be good to negotiate with Yuki once again and bring Yuki into the camp. Rudra's broad-mindedness was not the same as Yuki's. That's why Yuki is creeped out about Rudra and at the same time angry at being belittled. Good at domination. The same goes for me on this one. I'll bet everything on this power, the king of greed. Rudra looked at Yuki amusingly, inwardly rejoicing at the long-overdue match. If Yuki is able to bear his own domination, it may lead to the consequences of raising tigers to cause trouble. But even with that possibility in mind, Rudra still opted for a showdown. If it falls short here, it means that my supremacy was only that great. Rudra didn't bother to think about failure. It would also be a pleasure if Yuki pretended to be submissive. A pawn in such a tame hand is what a ruler of the world should look like, and Rudra is full of confidence. Veilgrind had been together with Rudra for a long time, and what the other was thinking could be understood without words. That's how you know that admonition is useless too. I know. If you lose, I will avenge you. Saying so, Veilgrin stepped back. No need to worry. Rudra smiled bitterly and stepped forward. Then, Yuki also forcefully pulled the body that was emitting a sad cry to stand up. That's funny, you guys. It's also understandable why Guy judged you guys as game-disrupting clowns on the board. Why would you know this? Hey, it's called the Moderate Clown Troupe, right? A moment ago, a report was received from Tatsuya that the chairman of Clown Troupe had also fallen into my hands. I'll tell you this, too. Now that we know all your information, challenge me with this mentality. Tatsuya, also known as Lieutenant Kondo. Rudra used some means to get in touch with Kondo, and by this time, reports were received that Kagali had surrendered. Understanding that, Yuki sighed, it was bad. That is, even Yuki's peculiar physique, the conversation during the fight with Guy, it all leaked. Yuki told someone who could be trusted that he had awakened his ultimate power. The loyal Damrada seems to have kept it a secret, but there's no point in it at this point. Kagali was Yuki's partner and rightfully shared the secret. Really, this is hurting my brain. Are my hand cards all exposed? Yuki thought in his heart that there was nothing he could do, and even had the idea of simply abandoning it all, but pride does not allow itself to be held back. More importantly, wasn't Kagali dead? Rudra seems to be the one who dominates the power of the system, and it seems that Kondo is using a power that mimics Rudra's. In that case, rather than running away, Yuki formulated the battle in a flash. Although the success rate is very low, the mood is a little more relaxed compared to a challenge with no calculations at all. Thank you so much for taking care of me. But your submissiveness will be fatal. It's okay. The rule of thumb is that a victory over a fully committed opponent is a complete victory. So you, too, give it your all without remorse. After saying that, Rudra took a step further forward. Unarmed and in a unique pose. Rudra was originally a swordsman, as evidenced by the taishin that hung around his waist, but only intended to exercise the power of domination, just as he had declared to Yuki earlier. Yuki had seen right through Rudra's character. It's not like a dominant person should have the frank personality to face a fight sincerely to the right. It is because of this that it is easy to see through. Honestly, it's impossible to win decently. Even if there's a chance of getting rid of Rudra, there's still Veilgrin. Since I can't escape from here, all I can do is invalidate Rudra's domination, right? No, Rudra had expected that. On this basis, there is an overwhelming confidence to dominate him. In this way, all Yuki can do is, come on, Rudra. Yuki bet everything on the mere possibility. Hegemony, unleash the power. With Rudra, Yuki's movement, the distance between him and Yuki was pulled to zero in a flash. The domination of the king was then launched. The essence of the ultimate power, the king of justice, which enables anyone to submit to the power of Rudra. Unlike the imitation loaned to Kondo, there is no limit and the power varies greatly. Even for ultimate skills, there is a rank gap. It was impossible for Yuki, who had just awakened, to defy this power. Rudra stood from grace. Yuki fell in place. The win and the loss look clear at a glance, but the outcome is unknown. Is it really okay not to kill him? This kind of guy just pretends to be obedient and then bites back when he's inattentive, right? That's okay, that's where the fun is. If he can resist my domination, then as a reward, I'll just let him go. Contrary to that statement, Rudra's confidence was unshaken. Convinced of his absolute domination, he did not doubt victory in the slightest. That's good. The winner, Rudra, smiled fearlessly. Then, turning his gaze to Damrada, who had melted into air in the corner of the room, he spoke affectionately. Forgive me, Damrada. Now, don't let you get in my way yet. All is as His Majesty would have it. Just so, the two understood each other. When that man wakes up, you take care of him. Understood. As if satisfied with Damrudra's answer, Rudra left with Veelgrind. The purge was just beginning. Now that the Emperor has acted, it means that times are about to change. Tiju, too, was not immune to intense unrest. That day, the sky was tinted bright red late at night, and scarlet rain fell incessantly, enveloping the night. Chapter 4. The Purification of Red Lotus. The eastern metropolis of Dworgen, the armed state, is now being blockaded by 60,000 troops. But that's just camouflage work. Both camps have secretly forged alliances. What should be done to prevent mistakes from causing unfortunate accidents is what hurts commanders. In this case, the atmosphere among the soldiers at the grassroots level was relaxed. The tents of the camp were pitched and the soldiers chatted feverishly there. Only, everyone was also still moderately nervous. Every soldier, every pawn, can remain the same, and the quality can be astonishingly high. It's only natural that their morale is so high. After all, their superiors were having their final combat meeting. Down with the empire and a new state, that dream, will be decided by this conference. All looked in the direction of the imperial capital with eager anticipation. Because of this, many people are noticing at the same time. So red, huh? Tiju, is there a fire? What happened? No. Is the plan compromised? On such an important day, something happened in the imperial capital. No one would think it was just a fluke. The subordinates must have encountered something, and all present were aware of it. Shall we send a reconnaissance unit? No, it's better to act as a team. Dumbass. If we do that, won't our betrayal be completely exposed? The absence of the person in authority means the absence of the person in charge of command. What was originally derided as a patchwork of hybrid legions would become unmanageable once it broke out. Someone, who had previously kept his eyes closed, ended the scene with a loud cry. His name is Zero. He is the man who was appointed by Yuki to the position of Deputy Army Chief and is the highest commander of this place today. Silence. No random actions. I'll wait right here until Lord Yuki arrives, and there will be no change in this policy. Such an assertion by Zero has made people of different views regain their composure. Since one doesn't know what to do for the right solution, one has to follow the orders of one's superiors. Even so, the uneasiness in people's hearts does not just go away. Then their unease, in its worst form, became reality. Good evening, you fools. Even on a comfortable night like this, it's still not good to be too noisy. Leisurely. It was as casual as a walk. The woman came down the street. The beautiful woman with the blue hair was none other than Veelgrind. Who are you? The soldiers located on the outer side of the street began to stir, interrogating Veelgrind about her identity. Those who can speak to the troops in position are no slouch. One who did not detect the extraordinary aura of Veelgrind would not have survived in the hybrid legion. As the soldiers confirmed her true identity, the messenger ran toward his superior. The soldiers sprang into action and rounded up Veelgrind. At this point, someone who was confident in his or her abilities stepped forward. Hey woman, I don't know who you are, but if you want to pick a fight with so many of us, stop it. Don't look at us like this. It's also the strongest in the empire known as the Hybrid Legion. It's really funny that the weak claim to be the strongest. I've let you do this for the sake of morale, but I think it's better to forbid it in the face of legionnaires. What? The words of Veelgrind came from the absolute overlord. To the army, this organization, the existence of orders from distant summits. Whoever it was enough to make even the most base soldiers understand that the other side was a danger. Of course, Zero, who was the deputy army chief, noticed this as well. Hearing that there was only one person on the other side, Zero rushed over in order to confirm with his own eyes the true face of the other side. As soon as it was reported, he arrived on the scene. Then came the sight of Veelgrind in front of him. My Lord Marshal. Zero has not seen the Marshal. However, the scent on her body was undoubtedly no different from the overwhelming scent that had been emitted behind that curtain. Well, there are people who are a little smarter. Good, since we agreed not to kill all these people, let's have some fun before Kondo and the others come. Using that statement as a signal, the tragedy began. Gazelle lived each day with anxiety. The war goes on, and it's a headache enough. But, compared to this, upon hearing Jane's report, Gazelle felt his stomach perforate. Surprisingly, even the minions have evolved into true demon lords. What on earth was Rimuru thinking? He would have taught him a lesson if he'd been there. Gazelle sighed heavily. The phrase true demon lord is loaded with words. The term demon lord is used to refer to the king of monstrous things that dominate a certain territory. In contrast, the true demon lord represents the state of a magical being. When the true demon lord seed awakens and evolves, it will be called the true demon lord. In fact, the correct criterion of strength should be less than catastrophic and at the top of the catastrophic scale. No, there isn't much of a catastrophe level, so what's the point of talking about the top and not the top? Calamity level, the classification used to denote a demon lord. Therefore, only 8 people currently meet this criteria. That is to say, there were plural minions that were equal to the strength of such a high existence and were born under Rimuru. Just thinking about it gives you a headache. Anyway, Gazelle complained to Elmesia first. Can't stand to be the only one to worry about it. Thinking so, he decided to have Elmesia share in the anguish. The conclusion obtained is to continue to keep an eye on Rimuru until the problem occurs. It's just pushing the issue back, but because nothing can be done about it, it's helpless. If it comes to the point where Rimuru and the others are really judged as a threat, the battle for the survival of mankind will begin, right? I don't want that to happen. Gazelle sighed alone. However, to such a Gazelle, another piece of bad news came. Oh, my gosh! The Hybrid Legion is on the move. It looks like there's a fight going on with someone. Although the voice was calm, Gazelle felt a panic from it that was disproportionate to the dark side. Before hearing a more detailed report, he summoned Dorf and others by order. A few minutes later. Can't be wrong. It's a monster. It's an opponent that humans can't help. It's a monster that even a demon lord would be compared to, a monster beyond imagination. Is it a dragon? That's right. It's the first time I've seen it, and it's in human form, so I'm sure that woman is Veilgrind. This is a magic call with the supreme commander of the military ministry, who is in the eastern city. Through the sight that had been transmitted, Gazelle they too had grasped the current situation. The worst state of affairs always happens at unexpected moments. This, Gazelle felt bitterly now. The air was burning. Coolly dancing beauties, and strong men who failed to fall to the ground. The blow was both beautiful and daunting to the eye. However, the real horror comes later. Veilgrind, who was reflected in the crystal ball used for surveillance magic, looked over to Gazelle and them. Just when Gazelle thought it was just chance, the next moment, the crystal ball broke. Is that guy looking at us, too? Hard, unbelievable. How could this happen? Fool, right. It's a long way from here. That's the truth. The other party should have sensed the magic and tracked down the caster, but I didn't think they could even affect the destination of the magic transmission. No, it's impossible to do such a thing with a human body, even for an old man. Gazelle listened without a word to his companion's remarks. From what had just happened, it was also enough to conclude that the other party was their enemy. But this opponent is really... No, 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 no. The dragon species, eh? It's a real monster. Gazelle now understood the true meaning of the word strongest. He had heard rumors of the Empire's connection to Veilgrind. Although it was impossible to figure out the truth of the rumor, he had repeatedly assumed that he would manage to defend even under his attack. However, Gazelle now understood that this was nothing more than a fantasy. The reason for the Empire's outpouring of Veilgrind at this juncture is unknown. What Emperor Rudra really thought, Gazelle couldn't comprehend with any more thought. Gazelle can do only one thing. Let's put myself in the fight. Your Majesty, this is too dangerous. Even so, I'll have to go. Even abandoning now will not save Dworgen. O Dorf, be aware of this. In the face of these words from Jane, Dorf had only silence. He had no intention of saving them from death, and he realized that no amount of persuasion would change the situation now. Then I'll get ready to go as soon as possible. It's all yours. Gazelle nodded solemnly and closed his eyes. There is as much to do as a mountain. It is necessary to inform the allies of the state of affairs and to give corresponding instructions to those nationals who remain. If Gazelle and the others could win, what would they do if they lost? The nationals have nowhere to run. It is estimated that there is no other means of preserving one's life other than submission to the Empire. That would also mean the collapse of this country of Dworgen, and in order for that not to happen, Gazelle they must not fail here either. The eastern city can't accommodate the entire army. The follow-on troops were arranged to march on the ground, and command was left to the old men. Jane, it's up to you to convince the job. Got it. So, what are you going to do, King Gazelle? I'll be one step ahead. After all, if it's late, it's not my turn. Gazelle said, a fearless smile on his face. It was all about playing a powerful king and thus easing the restlessness in the hearts of the multitudes. And just like that, the army will finish its preparations as fast as it can. And without waiting for the army to finish, Gazelle's party had already set out with the Tenju Knights, led by Dorf. As he flew through the sky, Gazelle suddenly thought. Is this the reason why Rimuru gave his men the strength to survive the war? If that's the case, I'd have to say he's always been so naive. Noticing the truth, he couldn't help but laugh bitterly. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but smile at the thought of his mentor brother, Rimuru, who had never been able to completely let go of his naive thoughts from beginning to end. What's the matter with you, O King? It's nothing, it's just a bunch of boring ideas. You mean? Humph, it was in this desperate situation that I thought of that Rimuru. And then, somehow, there's a sense of getting through this crisis. Although he himself felt such thoughts were too optimistic, it was better than pessimistic. Gazelle laughed thoughtfully. Yeah. Speaking of which, when that Charybdis came in, His Majesty Rimuru was also quite a mess. I was shocked to learn that I could be associated with the demon Lord Milim. Dorf replied with a smile. If I had to say that, I would like to mention how hard it is for those of us who have been responsible for surveillance. We're almost fed up with the fact that whatever is reported is being treated as a lie. Even Henrietta, who was usually silent and only occasionally sarcastic, said so, which made it difficult for Gazelle and Dorf to hide their surprise. Ha ha ha, sorry about that. I'll take care of it later. Lady Henrietta seems to have a lot of grievances, too, then of course. Whoa, 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 whoa. That being the case, Henrietta you just go straight to that Rimuru guy and complain. I have a headache on my side, too, and although I trust you guys, the facts of what Rimuru did were too much for common sense. By the time I heard Jane's report, I honestly wondered if she was out of her mind. Ha, after all, that report was outrageous. I've always been in the position of reporting, so I'm finally able to enjoy it as a spectator. At Henrietta's sarcasm, Gazelle and Dorf couldn't help but smile. Laughter echoed through the air. By the way, one more thing. Along with the previous grievances, it has been reported once to His Majesty Rimuru. Yeah? Gazelle nodded and moved on. The unease is gone. Releasing a despotic aura corresponding to the hero, Gazelle flew into battle. Time goes backwards and forwards. The next day after drinking with El Mizia, the sun had already risen to its zenith. You're up early, Lord Rimuru. I'm sorry. The smiling Shuna is so scary. There is only one option for apology at this point, so I'm going to preempt it. What's the deal with not only getting drunk but also sleeping lazily? That's what I've gotten through my efforts, and getting yelled at for it? Shuna let out a deep sigh, then stared at me with oblique eyes. So, have you come to a conclusion? What conclusion? You've been having a hard time last night, haven't you? Because I don't know if you're going to do something crazy again, and no, not just me, everyone's worried about you. Hearing that, I couldn't help but be moved. It's okay. I wasn't going to mess around. If it doesn't work, just run away, and by then complain to Guy and let him take care of it. Just do what you can before it becomes that. There's always a way up the hill. This time we'll put safety first, too. Although I replied lightly like this, Shuna still had a troubled look on her face. Or is it that Shuna, who has a unique skill called Resolver, can't be fooled? I guess even this skill has been exposed to me. Just as well. Seriously, I wouldn't want to do something so dangerous. Safety comes first, but the enemy's battle strength is still unknown. In particular, the three of them, Lieutenant Kondo, Veilgrind, and Emperor Rudra, were all strong enemies in every way. Not only is it a matter of not being able to beat them, it's also possible to be killed on the spot. As much as I have pondered how to avoid this possibility, it is the only thing that even the King of Wisdom cannot give a good answer to. Since you don't know the answer, go ahead and go hard on it. You can only put in the maximum force and minimize the risk. So, actually, I was wondering who to take there. This time, only the higher-ups could get past. It's not a good idea to say so, but it's only a hindrance to those who don't have the strength to go along. Yes. Brother said he must come along, and he's been working hard since the morning. It seems my thoughts have really been exposed. He had been drinking with Elmesia all night last night, so the conversation with Guy hadn't been conveyed to everyone yet, but Shuna was already smiling as if she knew everything. I smiled bitterly. To such Amy, Shuna began to narrate the report with a natural attitude. Last night, the dubiously extreme Laplace came over. Although he said he had a message to pass on to Lord Rimuru, he told him to wait first since he hadn't applied once. Despite the sudden change in topic, though, it doesn't seem like it's that important. If it's really an emergency, I'm sure there will be contact from Jidora's side as well. I guess Yuki has something to say to me, exactly what it is. It's gonna be a pain in the ass, but let's go get some. Yeah, actually I wanted to drive him back, but he's an ally for now. Then I'll take him to the reception room. Shuna doesn't have much of a liking to Laplace either. Barely displaying good and evil, Shuna-chan rarely treats the clowns with a revealing attitude. Sure enough, she couldn't forgive Laplace and them from the bottom of her heart for causing the destruction of the great ogre village R. While they are now considered allies, don't forget that. During my conversation with Laplace, gather the waking subordinates into the conference room. I asked Shuna to do so. Although there are still many things to think about, these are things to be left to worry about after a win against the Empire. I put aside all confusion and decided to focus on the problem at hand first. A total of 20 people, including me, were gathered in the conference room. Rigurd, and the 4 elders under him. Rugged, Rigurd, Rogard, and Lilina. Then there was Kaijin and Vesta, and Myomile. There are 7 people of the 12 patrons. Benimaru, Shion, Diablo, and Gable, plus the demoness trio of Testarossa, Ultima, and Carrera. Lastly there was Sue, Hakuru, and Gobta, with Jidora by the way. Regarding Jidora, this time it was to ask him to lead the way within the Empire. Honestly, although I myself feel it's a bit much to do, the hardest thing about what happens is Jidora, it's just the combat setup that gives him credit. That being said, Bonnie also offered to take responsibility for leading the way in the Empire. However, because the loss of strength would have made him a liability, I dismissed the application. It's enough to have Jadora around. So next. It feels like we're always in meetings, but complaining about that doesn't help. Our country has become too big for us who want to decide everything by our own will alone. In spite of all this talk, this time it was only to convey what I had already decided. Jumbo dishes were served with tea as usual. After confirming that she had quietly retired, I spoke slowly. This time, I have called you all here to convey the decision on the final battle with the Empire. One more thing before that. Come on in. I've already decided on the person to take over, and there's no need to hurry now. Before that, let's introduce Laplace, who came as a messenger. What Laplace came over to say, as I expected, was something related to the common fight. They intend for the legions blockading the eastern side of Dorgan to attack the Empire and want us to join them. These were consistent with what I had heard from Guy, and I wasn't about to say no. However, my intention was not to win by army, but to have a final showdown between elites. I didn't want casualties among civilians, so it was necessary to talk carefully with Yuki again. Despite the suddenness of the situation, it was necessary to prepare the venue for the negotiations. The matter has also been discussed with Yuki through Laplace, and the time has been set for daylight tomorrow. It is I who will illustrate for all of you who have come together. I was going to leave it to Laplace to do it, but he was too suspicious and dismissed it. Credit is important, and I'm realizing that again. Hello, everybody, this is Laplace. I'm the vice president of the Moderate Clown Troupe, and I'm here as an emissary for our boss Yuki. Wahoo, this guy is super suspicious. And why it's necessary to dance at a time like this, I can't understand at all. However, since this guy had been sent over as an emissary, it wasn't good to be too cold to him. I'm not the only one who's annoyed, as Sue is even ready to make a dangerous move, but we'll have to hold back here. Lord Sue, put away the bitterness. Yes. It's too much to be careless about, Sue. Laplace always sits down honestly, but still can't be careless and hurry to end the introduction. This is Mr. Laplace, Yuki's liaison. It doesn't matter if you just call me Laplace? Oh yeah? Then I'll make myself at home. I've said so myself, I'll accept the kindness of others. It has nothing to do with the identity of the messenger, do what I want. Yuki has arranged a meeting place for tomorrow, and although things are urgent, it seems that Laplace will send us there, so there's no need to worry about moving time. The important thing is, who's coming with me? Finally getting to the point. We can only send up to 6 people at a time. Our family and His Majesty are definitely going. Who are the remaining 4 people who can tell me? Truthfully, it's about wanting to put in the maximum amount of fight. But now, no matter what you do, you can't talk about the whole group coming together. Ranga is still sleeping in my shadow. Geld was also still awake. The members of the labyrinth, such as Nine-Tailed Kumara, Zijin, and Adalman, remained shrunken in the labyrinth with no sign of waking up. Evolutionary dormancy varies from person to person, which I understand, so now we have to confirm based on the members who can act. Benimaru, I want you to come with me. How's your health? What, do you have a cold? Laplace asked with a look that didn't dare to be careless, but I wasn't going to tell him about the awakening. It will be exposed sooner or later anyway, no need to make a deliberate statement. No problem. Excellent condition. Benimaru smiled fearlessly. Completely ignoring Laplace, the cool attitude didn't fall apart without a hint. Unlike me, I really admire Benimaru's temperament. While lamenting, taking a closer look, Benimaru didn't know when his race had changed. It seems to be going well with Mummaji and Albies, and he's managed to evolve. It was only afterwards that I heard about it, and it seemed that Benimaru had spent 2 nights in succession with his 2 wives. Should I say it's really hard work, or rather should I say it's really fucking enviable? After abandoning the flesh, he receives it again and becomes a full spiritual being. The racial name is Flame Spirit Oni, a kind of the divine monster spirit. Like the dragon race, It has both holy and magical properties, and can also be called an upper-tier divine monster spirit. The divine monster spirit is a lower being compared to the dragon race, and has the same attributes as the dragon race, but is higher in the fire attributes, i.e. the laws that make up the principles of this world, are all made up of 8. The natural properties of earth, water, fire, wind and space are known as the 5 major properties. The earth is not as strong as fire, fire is not as strong as water, water is not as strong as wind, wind is not as strong as air and air is not as strong as earth. The earth is consumed by fire, and the fire is annihilated by water, which is dissipated by the wind, which is isolated by space, and space can only rely on the earth for indicators. The 5 attributes form a mutually exclusive relationship in this role. In addition to these 5 attributes, there are 2 opposite attributes, light and dark, and an unrestricted attribute, time, which is at the top of all attributes. A spirit in the form of a giant of inflammation, like Ifrit, is bound by such physical laws. It should be said that the laws of this world are manifested in the existence of elves, which seem to have 8 properties. Light is more specific to darkness in that light sends angels and darkness sends demons. If we trace the origin of the angelic monster clan that we can now identify, it seems that it is not wrong to call them elves. Just ask Diablo and he should tell me in detail, only even knowing that would be meaningless and not interesting to me. It is important to note that higher than the spirits is the divine spirit, who also has 8 kinds. The most powerful of the divine spirit is the dragon race, and only 4 dragon race can be identified at present. Veldenava, the star dragon is, in my opinion, an attribute of space and earth based on the stars. There may also be more attributes. White ice dragon Velzado, probably watery. The scorched dragon Veilgrind, which is also probably a fire attribute. And our Veldora, who, apart from water and wind, can even dictate space. Don't look at him like that, is unexpectedly quite a guy. In short, it is not wrong to think of the true dragon seed as the apex of the divine spirit, and Benimaru has evolved into something close to a dragon species. The flame Oni is not only a spiritual life form, but also a physical body that has an impact on the material world, and its lifespan has no boundaries, so it is not too much to call him a Oni. It's a special evolution. The amount of key magicules is also dramatically increased. From what I've observed, there are several times as many magicules, and while the max is not as good as Rumina's, it should be a good matchup between them if they fight. In that case, they should have the upper hand against the single digits of the Empire. Yes. So the first one is sure to be Benimaru, and the second one is next. Ghidorah has decided, and there are 2 spots left. Xion and Diablo, I was going to take as well, that's just 4 people. Ghidorah will be the guide, and the rest of the places are for my secretary, Xion and Diablo. Letting Laplace take it was, me and Ghidorah, then Benimaru, Xion, and Diablo. Leave it to me, Lord Raimaru. As long as I'm around, it'll be fine. Xion said with a smile on her face. Xion, what are you talking about? Despite the uneasiness, Xion was reliable as an escort. In the past, she had even defeated Raziel, who was stronger than herself, and there was no shortage of Xion in terms of fighting. Kufufufufu, I don't know what Guy is up to, but it's outrageous to bother Lord Raimaru. With me on board, all troubles will be removed by me. Still so confident. However, it was very reassuring to give Diablo a job well done, so let me rely on it. It's not a good idea to say it's an elite few, but that's a relief, and the remaining people have to follow them to the Empire. Just as I was about to say it, someone expressed their displeasure first. Just a moment, Lord Raimaru. If a guide is needed, I think it would be more appropriate for me to do so. Please allow me to accompany you. It's Testarossa. I remember, Testarossa seems to have come from the Imperial side and should be familiar with the geography over there. She was active as a diplomatic marshal and good at negotiation. And her fighting ability is impeccable, maybe even better than mine. The good thing about taking Ghidorah was that he knew Yuki better than he did, and when you think about it, it should work without him. Ghidorah was pretty strong, but nowhere near as strong as Testarossa. What's more, there would be the fear of not knowing when he would defect. But because of that, even if something happened to Ghidorah, we wouldn't feel bad about it, but then again, it's too pathetic for him. I'll take Testarossa's advice here. Well, let's swap Ghidorah for Testarossa, then. I'm grateful. Testarossa had a beautiful smile on her face. No, I should say showy. Ghidorah didn't seem to have a problem with it either, so it was settled. Looks like it's decided, so let's go get ready. Call us when we leave. That's fine. What's in store? Not knowing what else to prepare, he asked Laplace, and it turned out that Laplace had a look as if his tail had been stepped on. This is. It's the hot springs, this guy. He was going back and forth between the cafeteria and the hot springs yesterday, enjoying our maintenance facilities like nobody else. Sue's tone sounded very angry. It's no wonder he's being watched. Ha ha ha, exposed? That's not very nice, Mr. Sue. How could it not be exposed? That's a lot of guts, Laplace. You paid for it, didn't you? Well, you see, we're guests. We'll work in the future to thank you, so please, let's take credit for this one. That's cheeky enough. I said you. Well. Isn't it all the country's fault? Now this is arguably the most advanced place in the world. It's such a blissful place, whoever is here will want a relaxing break. Laplace is a strong advocate of the goodness of this country. No one hates being complimented like that. Not a bad guy, my impression of Laplace has changed a bit. Don't be fooled, Lord Rimuru. Benimaru, don't worry, I will continue to monitor you closely, even if you're careless. Ouch. I tensed my nerves hearing Benimaru's words. A coughing sound. It's okay to stop. Yes, I know. I'll see you later, and we'll be going. After saying hello, Laplace left the conference room high and happy. After witnessing this free guy leave, we moved on to the next topic. Isn't it too dangerous to go to the enemy camp with only 5 men? We all feel the same way. If anything happens to Lord Rimuru, no matter how victorious the battle is, it won't help. Exactly. I also agree that there is no point in having an army at the top of the battle, but just in case, there needs to be someone who can act as a shield for Lord Rimuru. Sue, Gable, and Hakuru successively expressed their opposition to the course just decided. There was silence in front of Laplace a moment ago, in fact there was no agreement inside. The same thing that Hakuru said. Even if it was me, I would have realized that I was to be Lord Rimuru's double at the critical moment. Hey, Doctor. Meat shield? One can imagine what he was trying to say. This kind of thing seriously, I hope not. Hakuru, don't teach Gobta such things. I understand. But it is also important to teach awareness in the face of such situations, and please understand. I also understand Hakuru's claim. It's just that I can't accept it in my heart. I'm glad people are worried about me, but I value them just as much. The reason I didn't want to develop a combat plan that presupposes sacrifice is so that it doesn't happen, and that's why I'm working with everyone like this. Indeed, it seems I'm a bit arbitrary. Probably, doesn't take my word for it. On this issue, Benimaru and the others should have been on the side of Hakuru. If the positions were exchanged, maybe I would be in the same mood. But the mood of everyone makes me happy, but I really don't want anyone to sacrifice themselves. I know it's capricious, but let's prioritize my feelings here. In any case, it's not okay to have a sacrificial war plan. With this in mind, enter the final stage of the war against the Empire. Hearing what I said, everyone nodded. Regardless of the mood, it should be possible to calmly formulate an operational plan. Lord Rimuru, I have a plan. What is it, Sue? Now, my clones have infiltrated the Empire. Although it hadn't reached the imperial capital yet because of the excessive interference, the vigilance net had become looser than before. I think I can rendezvous with it at the destination of Laplace's shift through shadow shift. How about this? It turns out that's pretty reassuring. Sue is excellent as a secret agent, especially at a time like this. And his fighting prowess is impeccable. On closer inspection, the Sue also seemed to evolve without moving a muscle. Unknowingly, the Sue had ceased to be a fair Oni and had evolved into a race called the Dark Spirit Oni. It seemed to be a chain reaction caused by Benimaru's evolution, and Sue was granted a blessing. Sue was cultivated to serve as the shadow of Benimaru when he was in the village of the Great Ogre clan. Benimaru is the table and the Sue is the chair. They are both up and down and equally close friends. That being said, it feels like a pair of matching existences with Benimaru. It was because the two of them were in this relationship that Sue was most strongly influenced by Benimaru's awakening. Presumably Sue was being treated as subordinate to Benimaru. Well, it's not a big deal that the two will get along. Dark Spirit Onis are also Dark Spirit demon spirits, and like Benimaru, are spiritual beings with physical bodies. It can probably be seen as a subordinate demigod.